Hello everybody, so here's Luna Delir again, and I'm here to talk to you about ENFP versus ESFP. So this video has been also kinda requested, and therefore I'm going to proceed and talk about the split between these two types. Now, mm, these two types tend to feel a little bit similar, um, but they're actually extremely different. And the reason why they tend to feel similar is that the means and the tool that we use to interact with the external world is the creative function, so the auxiliary function. And these two types have both introverted feeling as an auxiliary function. Therefore, the product that they put in the world is similar, is the same kind of thing. And that's why it is probably a little bit more complicated to see the split immediately. Well, online, I mean, because in real life, extrovert sensing and extrovert intuition are like the day and the night. So you're gonna see that immediately. If you see someone in real life and you have to split between an extrovert sensor and an extrovert intuitive, it's not gonna be a problem. But online, what you see is basically the auxiliary function. So when you see someone typing, you're gonna see the auxiliary function. And that's the reason why it's so difficult to type people online. Most of the time, we tend to think that the auxiliary function is actually the dominant function of the person and that kind of stuff. So you have to keep into account, especially when the auxiliary function is a judging function, a rational function. It tends to show more than the dominant function, even if it is introverted. So, ESFP, SE, FI, TE, NI, ENFP, NE, FI, TE, SI. There are a bunch of similarities and a bunch of differences, and I'm going to start from the similarities as always. So in this case, we're going to start from the auxiliary function. The auxiliary function of ESFPs and ENFPs is introverted feeling. So we're talking about an extremely judging function. And if you allow me, also extremely judgmental. We've seen in FI dominants that they tend to be seen outside as a tiny bit too judgmental. And that's because their judging function is rock solid and it doesn't vary over time. Even if it's an I type, like ISFPs, that function in FI dominance is static. So FI in dominant position is static. But the moment we take introverted feeling and replace it in the auxiliary position, the function becomes flexible. So we have personal, static, ethic that is actually flexible. It means that these types change their tastes, their attraction, repulsion constantly. They can look at you in the morning and consider you a great friend and be completely attracted to you and want to spend the whole day with you. And then at midday, they're probably not really attracted to you. They do not really like you, and they're going to take a little bit of a distance because they're not really. Then in the afternoon, they're going to say, oh, wait, I wanted to spend the day with that person because I'm completely attracted to the person and I love the person. That's how both the ESFPs and ENFPs tend to be. Their introverted feeling is flexible. And being the creative and auxiliary function, the function that we use to produce in the world, first of all, both the ESFPs and ENFPs tend to be a little bit ostracized because they judge a lot. They basically go around looking for things to judge. And here my introverted feeling demonstrative will probably jump out of the blue because it's what I find the most hilarious. And they're basically doing the witch's hunt from morning to evening. Both ESFPs and ENFPs are witch hunters. They basically go out there and try to find a witch to judge. And when they find the witch to judge, the way they're gonna react is bad witch, and that's it. And maybe after 2 hours, they're gonna go like, oh well, it was not really a witch. That she's not guilty, so just you can let her go. That's how the creative function of ESFPs and ENFPs works. They judge everything they encounter. They are those types that can have a favorite song that is absolutely their favorite song, and they cannot live without listening to that song like 10 times a day, and they have to have that song around them. And all of a sudden, they hate that song, and what the fuck of a song is that? I don't want to hear about it anymore. That's introverted feeling in the auxiliary position. They are extremely changeable in their in the like and dislike, right and wrong, and in their approach to ethics. They are those people that can talk to a friend and speak like and accept this friend's negative opinion of another friend and go like, oh yeah, it's true, I see what you're talking about, I see what you mean. They will probably never express their opinion right out because introverted feeling is a very internal function, but they will agree just for the sake of being liked. And then they will go to the other friend, and when the other friend starts speaking evil about the first friend, they're gonna go like, yeah, I see your point, I noticed that too, yeah, I can see what you're talking about. Then they find themselves with these two guys in the same environment, and what happens is that the ESFP or ENFP doesn't know how to react to the situation. They have the ability to either take sides, so either go like, okay, I side with you, or they can be extremely diplomatic and keep a distance from both people and not even let them know what has happened when they were not there. They are very subtle in this thing. And the one thing that I need to say though is that this can look like a very negative picture, but they're actually always striving for authenticity. So if they agree with the first friend about something about the other friend, it's because they see that flaw in the other friend. They do not necessarily make it a matter of dislike of the original person, of the other person. But if they say that they see that, it's because they do see that. So they're introverted feelers, and introverted feeling always strives for authenticity. So basically, they're gonna go around and say one half of the truth to one person, one half of the truth to another person, and they basically keep the whole truth of their personal introverted feeling for themselves, except for those few people that they consider they can trust, which are extremely rare. I know a lot of ENFPs and ESFPs, and both types tend to be extremely jealous of their introvert feeling. I know one, for example, that tells everything. It's an ESFP, and she tells everything only and exclusively to her boyfriend. And they've been together for quite a long time, and she didn't get, she had difficulties at the beginning actually saying the truth. Not saying the truth. They always say the truth, but saying the whole truth altogether. So this is the introvert feeling of these two types. The other thing that they have in common is extroverted thinking in the tertiary position. So their hidden agenda is extroverted thinking. So they strive more or less to be MacGyver in a way. That's more ESFPs because of the extroverted sensing. ENFPs tend to be more so in the intellectual realm, and we will see why later. But ESFPs have this tendency of wanting to be ENTJs, whereas ENFPs tend to want to be ESTJs. So the tertiary function is basically extroverted thinking is raw knowledge, and personal benefit. So what builds the self-esteem of ENFPs and ESFPs is basically to be viewed as extremely knowledgeable and to be viewed as knowledgeable people, and to have their own environment. So basically, they need to have their own territory and their own area, their own realm of influence, the place where they have influence. And ESFP exponentialized because of the external sensing that is also territorial. But the benefit seen in a sense of personal benefit. So basically, they're a little bit the look at me type, but from an intellectual point of view. They want to be viewed as knowledgeable. So if you want to flatter an ENFP or an ESFP, ESFPs are particularly inclined to flattery. If you want to flatter an ENFP or an ESFP, you go to them and you tell them, you know a lot of things, you're really knowledgeable, I admire you for your knowledge. Try to be honest, because they see that immediately. If you're lying, they're going to see that immediately. They're like INFJs and ISFJs. They are really quick spotting lies. INFJs and ISFJs, because they see the energy moving in the wrong direction. ENFPs and ESFPs, because via introverted feeling they can see the internal disposition of the individual. So basically, careful, be honest with these types, because they see what you're doing before you even do it. What else can we say that they have in common? They are both introverted thinking vulnerable. So introverted thinking vulnerable means that they despise being corrected, and they hate being corrected. So if you go to an ESFP or an ENFP and you will try to push them to do things correct, or to correct what they just said, or to correct their grammar, or to correct anything that they're doing, they are gonna flip out big time. And that's because, contrarily to what everybody believes out there, the function that has a focus on what is correct and what is not correct is introverted thinking. So the grammar nazis are, well, ENTJs are very often blamed of being grammar nazis. They are not. Because the function that is a grammar nazi, because it looks at correctness, is introverted thinking. And that's why for INFJs it is so important to be always correct about everything. INFJs need to be correct, and that's because their self-esteem comes exactly from being correct in what they say and what they do. They're very precise when writing. They use big words unless they have gone through a process of clarification, like of lowering the vocabulary. And introverted thinking is basically the function that gives a categorization to the world. So ENFPs and ESFPs do not like, and in this case we can really say like, because we're having to do with introverted feeling. So they do not like being categorized and labeled. If you categorize and label an ENFP or an ESFP, you're going to have an exponential reaction. They're both very volatile types, especially ESFPs. An ESFP can rip your jugular and cut your throat, not physically, but psychologically, because they are extremely volatile and they have zero control over their impulses. And we will see extrovert sensing and extrovert intuition in a little while. An ENFP will probably rip you apart intellectually. Anyway, introverted thinking vulnerable. These types do not accept being corrected. These types do not accept being labeled. So if you go to an ENFP or an ESFP and you tell them something on the line of you're a pinup and in my eyes you will always belong in the cliche of pinups. The ESFP or ENFP is gonna despise you forever. And that's because they do not accept being part of a single thing. ESFPs are probably a little bit more accepting of this idea until it's positive. If they see that there's something positive, the ESFP is not going to worry too much. The ENFP is more focused on the intellect than an ESFP will ever be. And therefore, being labeled for an ENFP is extremely painful. We see that with the dominant function changing, the vulnerable function gains different aspects. So it's never completely the same in the two types. An ESFP will having that exterior sensing that is completely volatile, not focused on anything, and very, very abstract, and having that exterior thinking that makes them want to be viewed as knowledgeable and intelligent. They will have more of a focus on not being corrected. So being corrected or being told how they should do things is what kills an ESFP, whereas the ENFP is more focused instead on being labeled. The labels produced by interior thinking are the kryptonite of an ENFP. And that's because of that exterior intuition that is more intellectual and more intellectually oriented. Therefore, they tend to have their self-esteem in matters of correctness balanced by their exterior intuition, which doesn't happen in ESFPs. And on the other hand, they tend to be weaker what concerns their image, because the image function is exterior sensing. So when it comes to their image and labels, they tend to be weaker. An ESFP can accept being typed and being put in a specific slot. An ENFP normally doesn't. So they want to be typed, but at the same time, when you type them, they keep their options open, and they always keep into account that they could be also another type. They need that. ESFPs no. ESFPs want to understand because they need that to get to the exterior thinking knowledge of the subject. So they don't have the backup of exterior intuition, like I said. What else? So they are both exterior feeling demonstrative. So it means that I'll keep this short. It means that they tend to mock exterior feeling, and they tend to be critical of exterior feeling types. So a manifestation of affection or a manifestation of emotion in the external environment is going to be taken by these two types and teased, mocked, criticized, and not appreciated. These are the functions that the two have in common. Now let's see the differences. The differences are weird because they make for two very different types with things in common. I find this part of this specific split really fascinating, and that's why I'm going to keep it a little bit longer than my normal split videos that are around this time. Anyway, ESFPs, exterior sensing, shiny! Oh, shiny! That's an ESFP. ESFPs live for shiny. Shiny makeup, not necessarily glittery, but what they like in makeup, so shiny. That's shiny, I want it. And they live for what they want. Everything revolving around an ESFP is what they want. They are the absolutely highest energy type that you can find out there. They're my semi-duals. That's why I'm very, very fond of ESFPs. So ESFPs high energy. Like, think of an ESTP and how high energy an ESTP can be. They're exponentially more high energy. My ESFP friends are like forces of nature. Now, they are the entertainers. So a lot of people out there believe that ESFPs necessarily make you laugh. That's not true. That's not true, because ESFPs have that introvert feeling, and they can be extremely gloomy. I know ESFPs that have a very, very gloomy expression on their face. Remember that deep down they are INTJs, and their dual is the INTJ, and we know that the INTJ is probably the most serious type in the MBTI rose. So ESFPs have this gloomy extrovert sensing. It's really dark extrovert sensing, but at the same time they are entertainers. So for example, I have an ESFP friend. If you take one of those things that spin, I think it's called a spin, right out, and you make it spin in front of their eyes, like you drop it on the table and you let it spin, the ESFP is going to be captured. This friend of mine is going to be captured by this spinning thing and go literally, oh my god, that's spinning. I really literally saw that friend of mine do that. And they are optimists, so they are really optimistic types. Despite this gloomy introvert feeling, they are very high energy, very optimistic. But like I said, extrovert sensing tends to be the what I want and what I need function. So basically, they live to obtain what they want. There is no way to have an ESFP do anything that they do not want. They have to be the winner. They have to be the number one. They have to be always on top of everything. They have to be informed about everything. Extremely controlling type, especially if they're unhealthy. Extremely controlling type. They want to know everything, and they want to be on top of the castle, watching down onto everything. They are queens and kings, and they want to know everything, and they're going to do what they want. There is no way to get an ESFP do anything anybody else wants, except in the case in which they recognize a specific person's intellectual superiority. Like I said, ESFPs want to be intelligent and want to be knowledgeable. So the only way to have an ESFP listen to you is to be more knowledgeable and more intelligent than them, and it is extremely difficult because ESFPs having this focus on being intelligent are actually people that can force themselves into studying and knowing anything. They're normally on top also at school. They do everything they can to be on top. Now, some ESFPs probably will focus more on the social environment, and that's if they do not have anyone particularly smart around them in their family or at school, because they tend to be kind of lazy in a way. Extrovert sensing has a lot of difficulties focusing on reading, so they learn by trial and error and by listening. I had an ESFP classmate, and she was really, really good at school, at every subject, but she would never open a book when she was home. She only studied, she only knew things because of what she was hearing in class. And I kept telling her, if you don't read anything, how are you gonna know if in the book there's more? She didn't care. She didn't care because with what she had, with her life experience, with the experience she has, and she had, and with the experience of what she had studied before, heard before from teachers, she could basically answer any question that she was asked. She was awesome. I really enjoyed her. Her name's Elena, by the way. And she was really amazing, an amazing person. I wish I was still in touch with her. But anyway, I'm digressing. ESFP is accurate sensing, the spinning, the shiny, ooh, shiny. Anything that is shiny is going to grab their attention to the point that they can buy bulks of things without even realizing they're buying this stuff, and then get out of the shop, look at their the bag full of stuff, and go like, I only wanted to buy one thing. And they really do not realize they're doing that. They just do things and then realize they did it. And that's ESFPs. So other function that they have, inferior intuitive intuition. And this attitude of doing things without pondering the consequences is also part of intuitive intuition inferior. Now, intuitive intuition inferior is a little bit tricky for ESFPs because it shows in a double way. It shows in that they do this thing that they do not ponder consequences, or it can ride out, freeze them in place. Like if they start fearing that something can be dangerous, or they start fearing the potential consequences that they do not see of a specific circumstance, they literally get stuck, blocked, and they cannot move a single finger. They get terrified, and they need external help. They need intuition, someone like me, or an INTJ would be the best thing for them. They need this external person telling them, look, it's gonna be all right. This is gonna be this is gonna be a goal that way, and things are not. This is not gonna be a catastrophe. And that puts them back in motion and makes them move again. Also, intuition inferior makes for someone that needs environments in which they're appreciated. They cannot have their principles questioned, and that's because of that accurate intuition. They have difficulties in environments in which their principles are questioned, and therefore they need environments in which everybody is positive towards them. In that sense, so they need to be approached in an extremely respectful way, even more so than I do. So you know how much I need that, and I'm an intuition dominant, so I'm strong in that function. ESFPs are weak in that function, and therefore they need someone to reassure them. And if the environment is negative towards them, they're gonna go out and flip out like the world sucks, nobody loves me, this is an extremely bad place, everybody hates me, and they're gonna quit like with drama and fireworks. Because that's actually sensing. Like I said, very volatile type. They are introverted sensing, ignoring, and therefore they can go a whole day long up to the evening, like get out of the house at 8 in the morning and come back at 8 o'clock in the evening and completely forget to pee the whole day through. That's how far introverted sensing ignoring goes in ESFPs. If their attention is grabbed by social interaction, or that shiny thing that is shining down there, or there's action in that corner, there's people laughing up there, there's that interesting thing to see. If their attention is grabbed by the external environment, which is 90% of the time so, and they're not like sitting there rotting and bored to death, they tend to forget anything SI related. If they are at home alone, I've been told by my ESFP friends that they have this tendency to overeat and focus too much on introverted sensing, and they can get stuck in trying to figure out their introverted sensing reactions, and at the same time, they feel like annoyed by that, and they can have control over that, but because of their strong extrovert sensing and their strong will. And this will come handy to be compared to the intuition seeking in ENFPs, because ESFPs do not want to be told anything about that. ESFPs only do what they want and what they decide. Whereas ENFPs instead want someone to help them in that realm. They are pretty much the same, but they need someone to help them in that realm. They tend to overeat. Also, both types tend to be a little bit overweight, tend to go a little bit overweight because they lack that focus on interest sensing. ENFPs, interest sensing, inferior seeking. So they need someone helping them finding balance in interest sensing matters. So they want someone basically to tell them to eat that organic food, this much of that organic food. They need someone to tell them to stop eating that thing because it's going to hurt them. You're eating too much of that sweet, because they tend to, if they like a sweet, ENFPs are going to go on a tangent, off on a tangent, and eat bulks of that sweet. Kind of hilarious in a way. So they need someone to help them in that realm. They can forget to go to the toilet and need someone to actually tell them, you better go because you haven't been going for quite a while. I know it's pretty weird, but that's how this function works when it is completely sinking in the subconscious. One type, extroverted sensor, doesn't want to have anything to do with that shit. They can become aware of it and deliberately decide to ignore it. Whereas the interest sensing seeking type that has the function as the one-dimensional function really has difficulties knowing what to do, and they need external help. So we can start from here and pass to ENFP's dominant function. ENFP's dominant function, like I said, extroverted intuition, the intuition of potential. So basically, these types have the ability, ENFPs have the ability to see the potential in relationships, the potential in people, and the potential in the external environment. Like I said, extremely intellectual and brainy function. ENFPs have the ability to see what a relationship could potentially become, what a relationship could potentially be, what could potentially be done with what they have in front of them. I have an ENFP friend, Bunta Ricas Ripom. She has a YouTube channel and she makes videos also, and she's more focused on psychiatry, psychology, and really technical things about these subjects. And that's because of her brainy extra intuition. If you want to go check her channel, you can find a different approach to psychology, and that's because of the difference between my introverted intuition and her extroverted intuition. So extremely brainy function, looking for what could be and how things can be improved in potential. So they're not looking at something to solve right in the moment, like for example, I do, that I need people to tell me what they want me to talk about, because that helps me find new topics, because in that case it makes sense to me to elaborate on things. ENFPs instead, they elaborate on anything and everything, and they elaborate randomly on whatever strikes their attention. Again, with this interfeeling approach that has this moment, they like this theory exponentially, and that's the best theory in the world, and then after half an hour or 2 hours, they're probably going to hate that theory and really not know what to do with that. So that's the ENFPs. They are introverted intuition ignoring instead. So they are introverted intuition ignoring, and being introverted intuition ignoring, they tend to not take into account their own principles too much. They do not consider chains of cause and effect, what leads to what. They tend to ignore that kind of information. They are partially aware of it when they're on their own. They can be partially aware of that thing, of that kind of information, but to them it's just an annoyance that gets in the way of finding the potential of things. So similar to ESFPs, they have this weakness in intuition. They do not take into account the consequences of their actions. So if they choose to go down a path with a specific topic that they consider important or necessary for their extra thinking goals of hidden agenda, they decided to go after that specific theory and that specific idea. They can ignore the consequences on people of that kind of information. Like, for example, they could start talking about how to I don't know if let's think for a moment that an ENFP is attracted by a theory that explains how suicides start to ponder about suicide and what leads them to suicide without looking for a solution, and instead it has an accent on how things work and how they actually commit suicide. They will start talking about this thing and explain everybody about this thing without taking into account that someone could hear it, and I don't know, maybe this person can hear this theory and decide to commit suicide and use that specific method that is explained in the theory. They do not keep this kind of information into account, whereas an ESFP would get frozen and not talk about the theory out of fear to kill somebody. That's one difference. ESFPs any role function. So when you first meet them, they try to be brainy and look a little bit more intellectual. Whereas ENFPs, when they X-ray sensing role function, when you first meet them, they try to be a little more fun-loving. They to look a little bit more fun-loving, a little bit more decisive, and they try to give you this first impression of strength. For some reason. So this is how the functions work in these two types. I made it a little bit long, but like I said, I find this kind of split with the core functions in common very interesting, and I wanted to go in depth about it. I hope it helped, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.